Good morning, students. Welcome back to the learning of English. Today, we'll take up yet one more topic from the Everyday English Grammar book, chapter number 9, Verbs. I know you have already done verbs in Form 3, but we will move a little ahead in this chapter of verbs in Form 4. So let us once again know what are verbs. Verbs are the most important part of a sentence. You cannot form a sentence without a verb. A complete sentence is made up of subject and predicate. The main word in a predicate is a verb. Verbs are words that express action, being, and possession. Action words or verbs tell what the subject of a sentence is, does, or possesses. Sometimes we use more than one verb in a sentence. Some verbs work as helping verbs with the main verbs. So, basically, you all are familiar with the word action. Action means to do something, either physically or mentally. So the things which you do, either physically or mentally, or say an action, is known as a verb. That particular word is an action word, which is also known as verbs. Now, in a sentence, verb plays a very important word because you cannot form a sentence without a verb. A sentence is usually made up of a subject, which is a noun, say a name of a person, place, animal, or thing, and a predicate. A predicate will have a verb, most importantly, and also other parts of speech. But in a predicate, the main word is a verb. The verb usually joins in a subject with a predicate. We then come to know what the subject, that is, the noun, is or wants to do or has something. Now, in a sentence, you may have one verb only, or you may have more than one verb. When a sentence has more than one verb, the first verb becomes a helping verb and the second verb becomes a main verb. So, verbs, they express action, they express a person's being, whether the person is there or not, and the possession, which means belonging. Let us look now into verbs even more deeper. So, verbs are action words. Now, the action can be physical or mental. A physical action tells us about what we can see, and a mental action tells us about that we cannot see. For example, a physical action can be to jump, to smile, to speak, to cry, to stand, to sit. A mental action, for example, can be to think, to forget, to wonder, to believe. So these are the two forms of actions that we normally do. These action verbs, they express actions: hitting, walking, speaking, jumping, crawling, all these actions. They are also known as main verbs in a sentence. They tell us what action a subject does. For example, go, sit, walk, talk, stand, speak, think, eat, dance, jump. These all are the main action verbs. So, all these action verbs, they tell us what a noun is doing. Whether a noun is walking, talking, standing, speaking, eating. For example, Ruhi sat on a chair. Now, if you look at the sentence on the screen, Ruhi sat on a chair. I have divided the sentence into the parts of a speech. So Ruhi becomes a noun, which is a subject, the main character of the sentence. Sat is a verb, is an action that she does. On a chair. Chair is again a noun, which is the second character of a sentence. So, it expresses the action that Ruhi sat on a chair. It tells us what Ruhi has just done or is doing. Now, there are many forms of verbs. The first form of verb is being verbs. Now, these being verbs are also known as helping verbs. They actually help the main verb. They do not show any action in a sentence, but their main role is to join a subject to a word or words in a predicate. So they can also be known as joining verbs or linking verbs. These joining or linking verbs, or the most importantly that we call being verbs, they actually tell us what a subject is like, what the subject is. So, usually this being verb, the helping verb, they come before a main verb in a sentence. Let's see the same example again. Ruhi is a girl. Now, in this sentence, I have again broken up into parts of speech. So, Ruhi, as you know, is the noun and is the main character, the subject of the sentence. Is a helping verb. It is not a main verb. It doesn't show any action. It is just joining the subject to the predicate. Ruhi is a girl. Girl itself is a noun. So, being verbs are usually used to connect the subject to a word or words in a predicate. They are also known as linking verbs or joining verbs. But these helping verbs, they do not show any kind of action. The next type of verbs are belonging verbs. Now, these belonging verbs are also a part of helping verbs. They also do not show any kind of action. They are also known as linking verbs or joining verbs because they join a subject to a predicate. But the difference between a being verb and a belonging verb is that these belonging verbs, they show belonging or possession when they are used with a main verb. They also come before a main verb. For example, let's take a simple sentence with just a belonging verb. Ruhi has a toy. Ruhi, as you know, is the subject, a noun. Has is a helping verb, a toy. Toy is also a noun. So what does Ruhi have? Ruhi has a toy. Has is a joining verb or a linking verb, and it actually tells us that the toy belongs to Ruhi. So these are the belonging verbs. Now let's look on to some helping verbs. I have divided these helping verbs into three categories: to be verbs, to have verbs, and to do verbs. Under to be verbs, we have is, am, are, was, were, shall be, will be, only be, being, and been. So these are all forms of to be verbs. The next we have is to have verbs. Now to have verbs has only three kinds of verbs: has, have, and had. These change according to the tenses, which means these verbs, they change, or you may use in a sentence to show a particular time, a period in a sentence, a tense in a sentence. The third type of helping verb is to do verb. You have do, does, and did. Now let us see the example. Ruhi is writing a letter. So Ruhi, as you know, is the noun, is the main character of the sentence. Is writing a letter. Is a helping verb. It does not show any kind of action. And writing is a main verb. It shows a physical action that Ruhi is doing. And letter is a noun. So what action is Ruhi doing? She is writing. Now when I say is writing, it shows me the time that it is a present time, and Ruhi, when I am speaking, is still writing a letter. So it is a present continuous tense. So this is what verbs usually do in a sentence. They are the main crux of a sentence. Okay, so after knowing how many types of verbs are there, we now move on to the next part of a verb. Now this part of the verb is known as a subject-verb agreement. A subject is usually a noun, any kind of a noun. A verb is an action word, and agreement means they understand each other, they agree to each other, is what a subject verb agreement is. Now, when we say that we need a sentence grammatically correct, we usually mean that the subject must agree to a verb. The subject must be the same as the verb. Let's see in detail. A verb must agree with its subject in form of number and person. So it means that if I have a singular subject, then my verb is also singular. If I have a plural subject, then my verb is also plural. The next is that whenever I use the pronouns, we have already done pronouns. Pronouns are the nouns which are used instead of the main noun. So if I don't want to repeat my main noun again and again, I use a pronoun. Okay, so the pronoun I and you are the two pronouns that always have a plural verb. For example, I have a pen. Now, have is used for plural nouns, but for I, we always use have. You are a girl. You are a boy. You is usually denoted to be a singular pronoun, but we usually take a plural verb which is are. Now, I hope you remember singular and plural nouns. Singular nouns, they tell us about only one noun, and plural nouns, they tell us about more than one noun. Now, let us take an example to know further the subject and verb agreement. Okay, the example is the dog barks, the dogs bark. They are two separate sentences. Now let us observe these sentences. Okay. In the first sentence, the dog barks. The dog is my subject, is a noun. Okay. And it barks. It is singular. So dog is my subject, is a noun, and it is singular. So my verb also has to be singular. So I add s to my verb, which makes it singular, barks. Now, on the contrary, on the opposite side, if I see the next sentence, it says, the dogs, they bark. The dogs bark. Now, in this sentence, yes, my subject is dogs, they are nouns, and they are more than one, which means my subject is plural. Now, my subject is plural, so my verb also has to be plural. So, what do? I remove my S and I write the word bark. Now, usually students get confused between singular plural nouns and singular plural verbs. Singular and plural nouns, they have S when they are plural and they don't have S when they are singular. Okay. And when you talk about singular and plural verbs, in verbs, when I add S to an action word or when I add an S to a verb, it becomes singular. And when I don't add an S to the verb, it becomes plural. If you observe both the sentences, the verb in the sentence, first one, barks, I have added S, so it becomes singular. And in the second sentence, bark, which is plural verb, I have removed my S. Whereas in my subject as a noun, dog is singular, and when I add S to it, dogs, they become plural. So singular plural nouns and singular plural verbs are completely opposite. But in any case, the subject has to agree with the verb. So there has to be a subject and a verb agreement. They both should agree in number and in person. Except I and you. Only these pronouns are left out. So this is what a subject and a verb agreement means. Okay, so that was a quick and a short explanation of the chapter on verbs. I hope you understood the chapter verbs. I want you to read the theory, the written part in your grammar textbook about verbs again and again. And why I am insisting so much is because Verbs form the main role in your next coming up topics about tenses. Now, from the different topics of grammar, we are moving on to the most important topics of grammar. So after this chapter of verbs, we directly move on to tenses. Now, tenses are a little difficult, a little tricky, a little challenging chapters ahead. So you need to know your verbs, your nouns properly. So I want you to read the past chapters that we have done along with the rules and of course verbs along with the rules. So in this video, we learnt about verbs. I want you to do your practice work. You need to solve the exercises A, B, C, D, E, F and G in your grammar textbook, which is page number 41, 42, 43, 44 and 45. Now, after you have solved these exercises by yourself, you always know my next video comes up with the explanation and answers of all these exercises. But before you look up to my next video, I want you to solve these exercises by yourself. At least give a try. Some exercises of verbs are very easy, and if you have a doubt, read and go through the rules. You'll be able to do it better. Thank you for watching the video. You can subscribe to my channel on the YouTube and follow the playlist to see all the videos. Make sure to see all the videos that we teachers are putting up. All these videos will actually be asked in your terminals now. So you need to watch all the videos carefully and do your practice work also. See you.